I am going to have to get Nicole and everyone else a hard time. This is my 4th talk today, okay? And so if I drag on and go beyond 5, they're buying me extra beer, okay? So that's how we're doing this. They're getting the full money out of this. I appreciate you coming out here. If you didn't hear me talk this morning, I want a conversation. I know it's the last talk of the day. You guys are thinking about the reception. I am too. But let's have a conversation. We can hit anything you want. There's plenty of material here if you don't have questions. But I really want to go into what are some of the limitations that you guys have. Think about yield management. And I dare say this agronomist is going to hit a little bit on profitability. Is going to hit a little bit on the economic side of it. Because you know, it is fun to talk about these yield improvements, but if it doesn't have an impact on economics, it ain't going to happen, right? You guys know that, and so I'm trying to bring that to this conversation. When you guys think of yield management, profit management of soybeans, what are the top management decisions you guys are looking at, whether you're making them or you're giving the recommendation? You guys don't get credits until you answer questions. How's that? No. What are some of the top management decisions you look at for soybeans? Planting date. What was the one in the back? Seeding rate. Okay. So planting date. Go expand upon that. Earlier planting, I'm assuming. All right. And what's early for you guys? Beginning of May. Okay. I dare say, does anyone have earlier than that? Yeah. Into early April, maybe? Mid-April's at least? Okay? And we're going to go through the whys of that. I think that's a good part. Seeding rate. So this is profitability. I'm assuming a little bit more on that seeding rate comment. Would that be correct? Okay. Is there any thoughts in the crowd as far as increasing or decreasing seeding rates in terms of yield effects? What's the optimal seed rates? Is there such a thing on soybeans? There's a lot of variability, right? A lot of flex, if you will. Okay, so seeding rate, we'll get into that with the profitability, planting date as well. And I hate being tethered. What else? Yeah. When to irrigate. Okay, great. When do you typically irrigate?
I've heard talk where you don't need to irrigate till they're flowering.
Okay.
Okay. But not a lot.
Yep. Okay. I'll tiptoe there. I will tiptoe there in irrigation. Okay. What else? Maturity group, right? And what do you think about maturity group? Fuller seasons, short seasons, fuller seasons. Is that the nod? Nod. Okay. So let's get into some of those. So these are we got yield in the center of this, all driving to this point. You could slash that out and put profitability. Variety selection is going to be a big one on that. All right, so we got the genetic potential, yield consistency. I'm going to look at some of the varieties and how they respond. I got one example here with irrigation. I've also got some examples, not today's talk, so I'll go ahead and hit it. How many were in the sulfur talks, one of the sulfur talks this morning? Okay, a little bit, not everyone. So one of the things I really want to drive home with this varieties is how much they've changed, okay? What month makes or breaks your soybeans is the first question. What month makes or breaks your soybeans? August? Is that more or less what I've heard?
July 15th, August.
Okay, July 15th, August 15th. And you're saying that because of heat and water? Okay. Vast majority, a lot of people will probably say August. It's really more late August to September. So you get past that critical part that you're talking about the water. I'm talking about seed fill. I'm talking about what these plants are doing later in the season now. You know, we've often thought of August as being that point of where it makes or breaks us, but it's really about later into August and September because we're doing so much more later, okay? One example is that we've got upwards of 30-40% of the sulfur, and we're about 40%, 50% of the nitrogen by R6 in the plant, and it just keeps on going linearly up in terms of seed fill into the pods, into the seeds as we go into R7, R8s. And so that's what's kind of making or breaking us. In 2018, that was the best year for us in terms of a state level, yield levels. We were looking at the September weather. We had ample soil moisture, we had good sunlight, good temperature. That's all coming into play with seed fill and what these varieties are doing later. Variety selection. Timely planting, okay? I think there's a fair appreciation for timely planting. I grew up in the Midwest. I grew up on flat blacks in Illinois, and soybean was the rotation crop. We would plant it as long as it got in by Memorial Day, we were happy, right? And that mentality's got to change. If it hasn't changed, it needs to be changing, okay? That's probably one of the biggest things that I hit for the first few years, 5, 10 years. Holy cow, I've been at Purdue 10 years now. 5, 10 years at Purdue was just hitting that timely planting and what that's doing for our yield potential. When we start talking about 10, 12 bushel differences, that's a planting date effect. That's not a silver bullet, one product kind of thing. That's just a foundational, let's plant timely. And we're going to get into some of that. Narrow rows, I didn't hear that one. We're talking about canopy closure, right? We're trying to get that canopy closed by the time we're flowering out the top. For us in the Midwest, it comes with a nice little cutesy phrase that my grandpa, did you guys have any sayings your grandpa told you about corn in the 4th of July? Knee-high about, that's amazing. Across the whole U.S., corn's got to be knee-high by the 4th of July. It doesn't matter if it's New York, North Carolina, or Florida. Knee-high by the 4th of July, right? I had the same, did we all have the same grandpa or what? You know, so, but grandpa had that, and for us it's, you know, we want to be tasseling by the 4th of July. You know, 2019, we were lucky to be knee-high by the 4th of July on corn, and we had a late planted year. I mean, that's just what we had. On the soybean side, I have twisted it. It's green to the eye by the 4th of July. For us, we want it canopied. I want it canopied by the time it's flowering out the top. If we're doing things right with timely planting, we are going to be canopying about the end of June, early July with flowering out the top. You guys are in April planting, April 15th, you're going to be pushing that closer and closer to the summer solstice, and that's going to be really nice. We can't do it. We can only do it if we do a March 30th type planting. And to do a March 30th type planting, there's so much risk there, and I don't see enough consistent yield response, so I don't push that, okay? But narrow rows comes into play. All right, black screen, great. There you go. All right, there's beers, let's go. This is the one that's being recorded too, great. All right, managing pests, right? This all comes into play. Soybean cyst nematode, weeds. Do you guys have weeds? Yes. Who's the one that brought Palmer amaranth up to Indiana? Please tell me. I spent 8 years in North Carolina and never thought I'd see Palmer up in Indiana. All right, whichever one, we're going to have a talk. We brought water hemp to you guys as a response. But, all right, disease, insects all come into play. Weekly scouting, fertility. That's a huge one for me. I'm not going to hit a lot today on that topic, but fertility is a huge one. Right? I think that we often sell soybeans short on our fertility. Clearly, I had a little session this morning on sulfur, but there's a lot that we're missing out on there on the fertility side. And then we've got that thing called weather, right? It's blue for a reason, right? How does this all interact? How does this come together? And then, you know, your soil, right? How does this all come together to do high yield management, profit management, however you want to call it? It's just to be intentional. This is all the lead in for one slide to just do being intentional, not rotate the crop, okay? And so once we are intentional, again, timely planted, seeding rates that are appropriate for cost-benefit equipment, I think we have a lot of opportunity for yield as well as profit. So I can be long-winded, so I've learned over the years to give you the take-home slide early. So that if I don't get to the take-home slide, you've already seen it, okay? So 2020 vision, I got 1 year to use this phrase of seeing clearly, 2020, right? Variety selection, and you're like, okay, he's giving me these take-homes, it's variety selection, it's seeding, right? But they're huge for us, all right? And we're going to get into the whys, but variety selection easily 6 to 12 bushel, just selecting the correct variety, all right? The one that's got yield potential, yield consistency, all right, that's big for us. You talk about irrigation, when to turn it on, when to turn it off. There are interactions. I'll show you one slide. That's actually irrigation slide. Interactions with the variety. Okay. Now we got some other management that comes into play. Variety selection is huge. You got to start with a good foundation of variety. Seed rate. Again, talking about profit with this, seed rate's a huge one. A few years ago, when we were really seeing the market tank, before we even talked about trade wars, and don't even get me going on that. But even there, the ag economists like Shaun, we got to make up 60 cents per bushel. right? 60 cents per bushel, and I'm like, I'm an agronomist. I talk about, okay, is it a $10 an acre cost or $20 an acre cost? So I've tried to do both in case that you guys are more educated than me on how to do the economics of this on a per bushel production basis, right? And they're right. I mean, at the end of the day, you got to have the bushels to sell to make the profit. So 100,000 plants or so, and we'll kind of dive into that a little bit more. Or how low can we go, right? Can we go lower, right? Should we go lower? Timely planting, you guys hit this a little bit. It's about producing the nodes and getting the canopy to produce the pods, okay? How do soybeans grow and develop? In other words, how do they determine when they're going to flower and how many nodes they're going to produce? I'm hearing some whispers. I'm tethered, so I can't come close to hear your whispers. How do soybeans, indeterminate soybeans, all right, that's what I'm talking about. When do they decide to flower? Late, June 20th. I'm hearing several of the different answers. Photoperiod ringing a bell? Light, right? There you go. Man, he's heard me talk before because I go immediately sunlight. No, it's a night length. It's photoperiod, right? And heat units. Most of us have the appreciation for photoperiod, but not the heat unit side of it. The heat units is not easy though. It's a moving target. And that's where this timely planting comes into play, that timely planting allows us to accumulate a few more heat units, therefore have more development of nodes and growth, and have more pod production. All right? The node development as we lead into flowering, as we lead into pods. Okay? That nodes and canopy lead into pods. Seed size is a mixed bag. In other words, what I mean by that is, if you plant late, are you always going to have small seeds? No. Because you've got a 25 podded plant, it's got few pods, but you get the August and September rain, then you got gobstoppers, so they're going to be huge. Or you don't get the rain, and then they're small. So seed size is not a consistent response to planting date. Node number, pod numbers are. Okay, and that's a major part of our yield as well as our profit. In May, for us, that's easily 4 to 8 bushel and upwards of 10, 12 bushel difference in a timely planted versus something late. For us, about the 15th, 20th of May is where we start to drop off the cliff. And there's years that it's the 1st of May that's a linear drop. Not every year is that way. Okay, we'll get into that. In-season management cannot recoup the losses of a delayed planting or a missed opportunity. Okay, we can't make up that 10, 12 bushel with just 1 or 2 in-season applications. It's just not possible. And I've done those kind of studies. And then profits, it really is based on the solid foundations, okay? Solid foundations in timely planting, narrow row spacings, seed rates that are appropriate, right? As we get into that. And then we can start to back and forth with a few applications of products. All right, so let's go with variety. So here's just a nice little variety trial, if you will, just 6 or 8. It's not a huge one by any means, but we're looking at irrigation effects with fungicide management that comes into play. I've just pulled it out as an irrigation by variety right now. Okay, no stats with. I don't really care which variety's winning. In other words, I just want to say there's fluctuation, right? We got some varieties that are running 58 bushel. We got some that are running 64, 65 in the dryland scenario. Okay, so we've got a decent spread in yield. This should be fairly common. All right. So this 3.3A is at the top of the pack, 64, 65 bushel beans. Now, as we bring in irrigation, so I'll kind of answer a little bit. It's not a full answer because irrigation of soybeans is its own talk as well. I really don't turn the irrigator on soybeans until we're R3. Even later, you talk about flowering. First pod's when I turn that sucker on. Unless I'm to the point leaves are clamping up, I'm crazy stressed, all right, I might put some water on then. Otherwise, I'm letting them root down as best they can and go from there. If I run a blow sand or something like that, okay, I might change that a little bit. But for the vast majority of the time, I'm not turning the irrigator on. In these studies, I didn't turn them on. It's a Tracy sand. I didn't turn them on until R3. Okay? So turn that irrigation on. And what you should notice is that 3.3A is not the top of the list anymore. Again, these are just absolute numbers. I don't care about stats today. All right, so I just want you to catch this change. All right, so 3.3A still yields decent, 71, 72. But look at the change as you go to this 2.9 variety. That 2.9 variety in a dry land, 60 bushel, 61 bushel. We bring in irrigation on that bean, it's a 15 bushel response. It's going mid-70s on us, okay? You guys have similar effects with the varieties that you run. Now the trouble is trying to figure out which ones have those kind of response to it, right? That is the trouble. But there are those varieties that will respond to this irrigation scenario. Perhaps you've got a seed supplier that's got some of the access to look at these. But you know, thinking about that difference in yield potential and then bringing in management, that's 2.9 is benefiting out of that versus the 3.3A. It's just kind of one of those things you want to put in perspective. Okay, it does have that yield potential to change based on the management that you put to it. Ideally, yes, we want varieties that are yielding consistently, good yield potential. But if you know you're going in irrigation, you've got fields that are going in irrigation, you got varieties that you're selecting, make sure that they've got that opportunity. Okay? Again, I'm not going to belabor that. I could do just a variety selection talk, but I'm not. Seed rate. Profitability. All right? So, seeding rates. Gentlemen in the back, what kind of seeding rates are you guys running? 140,000. What kind of equipment and row spacing? 30-inch row. Time planting date, typically? 1st of May. Okay. So he's running 140,000, 30-inch planter, 1st of May. Seems pretty logical. Now, companies have come to a nice little 140,000 unit bags. Go figure, right? Makes it pretty convenient, right? Growing up, I brown bagged. Anyone know what I mean when I say brown bag? Right? Okay, you know what I mean, right? I ran a clipper. Anyone know what a clipper is? Yep, okay, I did that. Guess what our seeding rates were? 2 bushels. Yeah, growing up.
Then you know seed count there, did you?
What's that?
Did you know the seed count?
Seed count, what's that? I said 2 bushel, right? You know, that's 200,000, 220,000. It's $10 a bushel, right? Whatever that we clean. You know, now we're paying 60, 70 bucks a bag. We're looking at seeding rates. So 140,000 seeding rate, yeah, that's a nice place to start. We got into seeding rate trials early on when I came on board. When I came on board, Purdue had recommendations for seeding rates based on a 30-inch row, 15-inch row, 7.5. Okay, you may even see a big old, nice little yellow pocket guide we used to have. Now it's all color coded and nice pictures, right? And you know, as we went to the drill, the seeding rate increased, right? So we're at X on 30-inch beans, 15-inch, and down to 7.5. Our seeding rates increased. What might you infer with that? That narrow rows need more seeds? What do you guys think about that? Do narrow rows need more seeds? No, they don't. It does seem counterintuitive. So why did the seeding rate recommendation, straight out recommendation, increase as rows narrowed? Exactly. They suck all the seed out and don't put them anywhere where you want, right? So it's equipment based, right? So understanding the whys is what I'm driving at. So the whys, seed quality. Did you guys have any seed quality issues a couple years ago? Yeah, our 2018 year was horrible. Our 2017 production year for seed and 2018 quality was junk, right? So obviously you got to put it into play. We're making the assumption 140,000 seed rates. Okay, it's 90% germ. Beautiful, life is great, right? Not the 80s or 75s or anything else they tried to pass. Okay. Equipment, that's a huge part of this, and so that's what I'm really trying to drive at. Soil condition. Seed rate will change, but the plant population targets will not. Okay, that's really the take-home aspect of that. Plant population will not. If I could put planter units on a 15 or on a drill, you'd probably be fine with that, right? But it's a lot of weight and everything else. But as we look at this, targets 100, 120,000 plants. That's got a lot of cushion, guys, right? That's got a lot of cushion in there. Planters, so see how I've changed it. You know, it's not row spacing specific, it's equipment specific, okay? Planters, so there's planters that are 15-inch rows, right? 20s, twins, 30s, right? So 120, 140,000 seed rate. Air seeders, I bump it, 140, 160. Drills, like you said, they suck. They pull everything out, right? 160, 180,000 seed rate. Now, you can do some modifications to improve this, right? You can put SI metering belts on a drill and do a little bit better job in distribution. What can you do for seed depth placement on a drill? Where does it place it? Wherever it wants. When I'm calibrating a drill, if I don't see seed on top of the ground, a little bit of seed on top of the ground, I know I've got it too deep, right? You know what I'm talking about. That's why the seeding rate's so high. Gentleman earlier talked about equipment and seed depth. That's a huge one for us. And I don't think I ever followed up fully with that question earlier, so I will with you guys. All right, seed depth. Where do you want to be on seed depth on soybeans? Like what? 1 inch. 1 inch? Any other takers? How well does a drill do at 1 inch, by the way?
It would be anywhere from a ½ inch to 1.5 inches.
Yeah.
In our ground.
Yeah. What kind of ground, just so I have a frame of reference?
We're central Mel. It's kind of shaly, kind of rocky.
Okay, a little rocky and everything.
All no-till.
All no-till. All right. What if I would say I want to be 1.25 inches, 1.5 inches? Can you do that with the drill? Yeah, you're going to catch some of those, about 30% of it. 30% be on top, 30% be 2 inches. All right, so if you've got seed placement at a uniform depth, i.e. the planter side of things, better uniform emergence, do we have to have perfect emergence within 12 hours, 6 hours like you talk about that corn crop? No, but we do need to be fairly uniform. If it's going to be a day or two delay, I'm fine with that. Just realize that delayed plant, it's not going to yield the same as the next plant that was a little bit earlier. Is it going to be a drag? Is it going to be a yield drag or a weed for you? No. Okay, but it isn't going to have the perfect opportunity to branch the way it should. Okay, seed depth also comes into play with our root system, and root systems of soybeans are critical. Why? What nutrient are you not typically applying on soybeans? Nitrogen. If you don't have good seed placement, good root development, you're screwed on nodules, so it's going to take them a while to get there. If you're planting too shallow, guess what? The soil dries up. What's the first thing hit? Your nodules, your fixation. 1.25 inches, 1.5 inches may not seem like a major difference from a 1 inch, but it does add up if it dries out or gets hot, or you've got that variability come into play. Nitrogen placement, or nitrogen availability comes into play. Okay, seed depth, seed rates, all that. I'll go ahead and share as well. What happens when you guys plant earlier? Do you guys do any increased seeding rates with earlier plantings?
No.
Some people do. I don't think you need to. I just want to go ahead and hit that one. Does your seed rate change when you get into the first week of June, second week of June?
A little bit.
A little bit, some do.
After wheat really changes.
Yeah, wheat definitely afterwards. Okay, I'm going to get into that combination of seed rate and planting date as that comes into play. Cost. So if we're looking at just cost alone, $175, $125, let's go $60 a unit. That's a $20 swing for us, right? Just in saving $20 per acre just to get down to 125. Well, that's a pretty drastic change, 175 to 125. Even if you cut that in half and just do a 25,000 seeding rate drop, you're saving at $10 an acre, right? I mean, that adds up pretty quick. I want to kind of switch it to, what about seeding rate of 100,000? I've got plenty of those questions over the last few years. Okay, what do you guys think of a seeding rate of 100,000? Pretty gutsy, isn't it?
I think if you're using precision planters already.
Yeah, definitely not a drill. I'll give you that.
Should a target seeding rate change for soil type, like light soil versus heavy soil?
So the question was about should seeding rate change based on the soil conditions themselves, whether they're tough soils, light soils, heavy soils. I think they should. It's just your target stand should not. 100, 120,000 plants. And so what's interesting about that, I'll just go with sand ridges. Okay, now, a lot of people say, okay, I want to go higher seeding rates there as well as higher plant population. So they're doing both, right? It's not just increasing seeding rate, but they actually want more plants there as well. I've been finding the complete opposite, actually, that fewer plants for us is doing better on those scenarios. So that's or they're not as limiting. And for those low-lying areas that have got heavier fertility, if we're looking at seeding rate changes there, actually we can get into some pretty growthy rank growth conditions I don't know if you guys don't run any mucks. You got some muck soils occasionally? All right. For like our mucks and heavy low-lying areas, we're definitely dropping the seeding rate. We're dropping the seeding rate. Okay, we want to be 80,000 seeding rate, 90,000 seeding rate. We get 2 rank. Okay, you guys understand rank? This is close to cotton country. You guys should know rank, right? Midwest doesn't understand rank. Okay, so I did my master's with cotton, so I use rank from time to time. All right, so yeah, that does come into play if you've got those kind of conditions. Overall, we're still 100,000. I've got our crawdad soils that are wet all the time. 1 inch rain on those fields are like 4 inch rains on every other field. They're just wet. They don't dry out. And our plant stand, hear that? Plant stand optimizes at 50,000. I'll say that again, 50,000. I've got 6-7 years of data on that. So there is some of those fluctuations out there. I just don't know your soil specific to drill down. We can talk more later. Okay. Here's another way of looking at it, the ag economist way of trying to get some savings on a per bushel production bushel. Just going 50 bushel beans, nothing even crazy high. 20,000 seeding rate reduction, saving 15 cents per production bushel. 40,000 is upwards of 30 cents. So a few years ago they were saying, Shaun, we need 60 cents on the bushel is what we need to break even. And so I just got them half of that with seed rates alone. Okay. So again, profitability is what I'm talking about. Okay. No one brought it up, so I'll bring it up for you. All right, the idea of as we decrease seeding rates or as we get the tougher field conditions, what is that kind of population? You say, I'm fine with 100,000, 120,000, like you say, Shaun. But if I've got a field that looks pretty poor, I'm seriously thinking about replant. What's that population that you're really considering replanting? Say it again. Below 80. Okay, I'll go with that. 70,000 is my gray area. Okay, I want at least 100. I've got cushion built in, depending on your fields, but 70,000 is my gray area. All right, and here's the scenario that I want to paint. This does 2 things for you. It shows you a replant scenario that's perfect in terms if there is such thing with replant, and there's also this delayed emerging effect. So what I've got here, I'll use the diagram up here. The 4 black lines are the original planted on 15-inch rows. All right, and then we went back in and offset, planted 7.5 inches. All right, so we're kind of creating a drill, if you will, and then we're getting the plant stands as 50,000 original plus another 50,000. All right, so black, that's original, 50,000 plants. We've thinned to that. Yes, we actually thinned to that level. And then the gold lines were thinned to 50,000. Then we did it based on when the original plant was planted, so no delay. Original plant was VC. What growth stage is that? Cotyledons and unifoliates, okay? So it's about 1.5 inches, 2 inches tall. Cotyledons and unifoliates fully expanded. V2, so 2 trifoliates expanded or unfurled, unfurling. V4, you got to jump off the cliff, all right? So when are you guys typically making a replant decision? By V2. I'll ask it a different way. When should we be making a replant decision? Probably VC. Boy, you got it. Why VC? That plant's already sensing light quality at that point, whether it's got brothers and sisters around it, and if it doesn't, it's already putting primordia on for branching. Already at VC. This small, guys. That small, okay? And so this is how it plays out. This one's just that scenario, V7 with original stand, so 50,000 plus 50,000, 100,000 plants. You can start to see that delayed emerger or that replant, V2, it's down in between there. You can catch those. What do you think these plants are going to look like at the tail end of the season? What do you think there we go. You're good, thank you. What do you think those plants are going to look like at the tail end of the season? Do you think they're going to look the exact same, the original stand versus the replant? Only in one scenario, right? The original. Got you working? Here's what they look like. Original one, branched, okay, decent pod. VC, that's a dramatic difference, guys. That's just a VC, all right? So when I talk about that plant's already made the decision to branch, this is what I'm talking about, branch, and reproductive branches, okay? So if you look at the overall yield of this guy, this VC delay, we've got maybe 80% coming from the original VC, right, the original plant, and maybe 20%, maybe, coming from that replant or that delayed emerger, okay? I will be happy to tell you that there is no weed effect. In other words, we didn't have a drawdown on overall yield effect. So there is that benefit, right? Or there is no negative, if you will. Go down to the V2, which is fairly common. A V2, that's fairly common to fill in. Now, we did do mechanical damage. We did perfect with this, right? We can do that in research. But that plant, exfoliated, no branching, we're maybe 5 to 10% of the overall yield coming from that guy, okay? And then, again, dropping off the cliff, it's shaded out. It's just like the grass underneath the oak tree, right? It eventually dies, okay? Yeah?
I think this might be skewed just a little bit because this is a supplemental planting, not a replanting, where you got not much there.
50,000 is not much there.
I mean, well, a lot of times you're planting less.
Okay, I'll give you that.
This is too much of having a perfect planting at 50,000 and then going in and supplementing that. It's a little bit skewed because I've seen replants turn out better than.
And why is that? So I'm going to repeat, and I'm not disagreeing with you. I agree with you. And he's talking about the replants. There's going to be pockets that are worse than that, and we've seen those replanted ones look even better. Yeah, there's fewer plants there, period. It's 20, it's 30,000. So they are going to look better. There's more light penetration. And what is the equipment doing to the original stand? It's taking out 20%. Oh, even we've done it, and I don't have in this talk, we've done a replant with a 30-inch planter going at an angle. We're taking out 20% of the original stand. So I agree 100% with those scenarios, but it gives you an insight into how these plants are competing for resources, how they're changing and developing later in the season, okay? It's all about the idea of, okay, should we replant? How low can we go is what I'm driving at with that, okay? All right, yep.
None of them situations was it a weed?
Yeah, that's a great point. I'll reiterate. They did not become a weed. In other words, the overall yield, was it suppressed compared to the other scenarios? No, it never was. It's not. I hear that with corn from time to time, right? We don't see that playing out on the soybean front. Why do you think that would be? And I won't just pick on you. Why do you think it did not become a weed? What are the yield components of soybeans, basically? Pod load, seed size, number of seeds per pod. Does that happen over a short amount of time or a long period? There's a lot of fluctuation in there, so that's how this plant is responding to those conditions. And so the one that's a little bit further advanced, it's branching in pod. These guys that are coming to play, they'll catch a little sunlight, but they're only a 10-noded plant versus a 15, 16-noded plant that's already there. So it's taking the lion's share, but it's not losing out on the resources it's got. Okay, and it doesn't have the pod load, but it's got it on the other one because it's got 6, 7, 8 weeks to make up that difference. Okay. Yep.
So if you're past VC, you're into V2, you'd be better off to destroy the crop and replant.
No.
Because of cost of seed, you would be better.
Yeah, great question. I'm glad you asked it because I was about to zip past because I want to get some other stuff, but I'm glad you asked it. No, so the question was, okay, we've got this this overseeding is what we're talking about right here, right? And you say it'd be better off just tear that sucker up and replant. You've lost out on time of your growing season, okay? You've already established by V2, you've got good branching, you've got time, you've got reproductive duration coming into play. No, we actually get hit even harder in terms of a yield effect on that. Again, I wish I put that slide in there. Right, you're at 70,000. Yeah, I don't touch it.
If you're at 50,000, then cost of seed, you'd be better off to destroy
That's a gray area is what I'm really saying with that. I'm painting a perfect scenario in terms of this plant-to-plant competition. His point exactly. All right. So 70,000 and below, I'm pulling the trigger. 70,000 above, I'm not. It's for this one. Okay. I don't want you to use 50. I don't want the phone calls next spring. Okay. 70,000 is that gray area. Okay. I want to move on a little bit. I'm glad you asked the question though, because we have looked at that as well. I don't want to belabor any more seed rate other than say here's that crawdad soil over 6-7 years, 48,000 plants is all we needed. Now seed rates were different. It's crawdad soil. It's wet feet. We needed seeding rates to get there, but plant stands, 50,000 is all we needed on those fields. Okay. Timely planting, and so this is kind of getting to answer your question plus some of the other aspects. Timely planting, all right, it's about heat unit accumulation, it's about light interception so that we can get node production leading to pod production, reproductive branches. So we actually have pods on the branches, not just branches, okay? And then we get into this canopy closure, this reproductive duration, how long we're in seed fill, how long are we in pod development, right? This is all of those kind of money makers that we get out of this timely planting. For us, late April, early May is a good general sweet spot. Again, down here, I'd anticipate you're probably more in the middle of April, even earlier, depending on your fields. I don't know everything down here. Yield loss, the potential is 4/10 of a bushel per acre per day beyond mid-May, and that's conservative. I've got some data sets that are upwards of 8/10 to 9/10 of a bushel per acre per day. So in a 10-day window, I've lost 8 to 9 bushel. Okay. Get into some of the whys. Soybeans respond to photoperiod as well as heat units. All right, if it was strictly photoperiod, that March 30th bean and that April 27th planted bean and the May 30th, they would all flower on the same day, but they don't. Okay, they've got this kind of moving target that when did they flower, R1? All right, we hit summer solstice like you guys are talking about. All right, that was a March 30th, April 13th. But year in and year out, I can still do those. Yield level wise, I'm not catching it with what we've got. Okay, I just don't. I'm more late April is going to be a better spot for us in terms of canopy closure and getting the yield potential. We're going that 2nd, 3rd of July, roughly, right? Green July by the 4th of July. And again, if it was strictly photoperiod, all these would be flowering at the same point. But we gain heat accumulation, and then we gain node development out of that. All right. Switch a little bit, kind of bounce to this row spacing effect and some intense management. Some folks were talking about let's do wide rows so then we do all the intense management that we want without having tire damage, right? Let's do that and we run 30s. And this started right before I got to Purdue. And I just want you to look at the relative change. Who cares that these are 50 bushel, 60 bushel beans? I want you to look at the relative change, all right? So in this control scenario, wide rows were 30-inch beans, around the mid-50s, 54 bushel beans. They bring in their intense management, kitchen sink, everything you want to think about to it, multiple trips across the field. I mean, it swings up all of 2 bushel, right? If you had just simply planted narrow rows, 15s, you're already at that same yield level. The foundation, guys, right? Timely planted narrow rows. Then we can start adding on the icing and the sprinkles to this cake, right? So this intense management on narrows, not a 2 bushel swing, but it's more likely a 4 or 5 bushel swing, okay? So in case you're wondering about the row spacing by intense management effect, there is one there, okay? And I dare say if you run 15s, 20s, or twin 30s or anything like that, you better be running the same tire tracks, so then you just deal with that 2 bushel loss per acre with tire tracks and be done with it, right? Run at that same tram line, if you will, and call it good. All right, so node development, how this changes. So we can have 19, 20 noded plants easy. Timely planting, we can actually have higher than that. We can go upwards of 22, 23, 24 noded plants, same variety, okay? It depends on how many heat units that were accumulated during that month of May. All right, same exact variety. It could be upwards of 22, 24 noted, all right? Or you can start to jump off the cliff. 20th of May, get down to 30th of May. we're down to 17 noded plants. 1 week later, 6th of June, we dropped 2 more nodes. Okay? These are the huge swings. So then my comment, my lead in earlier was, do you change seed rates when you go later in plantings? 2019 for us, late planted year, right? We had a lot. So seeding rates for us, if we start at that 140,000 seeding rate, all right, first week of June, I'm up another 10 to 15,000, okay? This is the primary reason, node development, we've lost it out on an individual plant basis. We're trying to make it up on an area basis, as well as canopy by the time we're flowering, because it's going to be a shorter amount of time to reach that flowering, and we don't want to waste the resource of sunlight, okay? We go to second week of June, we're another 10 to 15,000 seeding rate up. So now it's not just 140 to, it's 155 first week of June, another 10 to 15, we're at that 165, 170,000 rate, okay? So that comes into play. Hours of sunlight, I think you guys should have appreciation for that. As you plant later, we're shifting when we hit these growth stages, okay? So 7th of May, this just happens to be hours of sunlight. 3 of our locations, I could put megajoules, but you guys are going to say, what in the world's a megajoule? But that's really, it's what we're talking about, light energy. But this still gets the point, R1, R3, R7, R8. So we want it canopied so we can harvest as much sunlight as possible, right? You guys are kind of shoot for that 20th, 21st. We've got to be another 10 days or so later, but that's where we're at. You go a little bit later, 22nd of May planting, 4th of June. What do you notice about this? It's shifting, right? When are we reaching R1? Later and later. What's hours of sunlight look like? Less and less on a per day basis, okay? And you should start to notice something else. Is it shrinking? Is the width of these bars shrinking, R1, R3 to R7? The seed fill, the reproductive duration is shrinking as well. So not only do you lose out on the hours of sunlight, the quality of light on a per day basis, you're having fewer and fewer days in that optimum time, okay? So this is yield effect that's coming with timely planting is huge. It's about light interception. When you're going through R4, R5 kind of growth stage, you're just starting to go into linear phase in terms of seed fill. Any ideas how much we're packing on? In other words, how many bushels per acre per day are we packing on late August, September? How many bushels per acre per day? Any guesses? 1? Okay. Do I hear 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 3, 3, 3, 3? 1.5 to 2 is our varieties from the 1960s. What about varieties today? Upwards of 3. Intense management studies, I don't have it in this talk, we were 3 to 4.5 bushels per acre per day when we looked at seed fill rates. I'll say that number again, 3 to 4.5 bushels per acre per day during the most intense seed fill period, R5, R6, okay? So if you lose out on 1 day, 2 days, let's do 2 days. Lose out on 2 days during that intense seed fill period, what does that mean to you guys in terms of yield? 2 times 3 equals 6. You guys don't do Common Core, do you? That's 6, right? So that's where we're losing out on a lot of this potential, right? And so just kind of, beating this down a little bit. 2018 was a huge yield year for us. Just timely plantings. Running 90 bushel beans, and this is a case where it is a straight linear drop for us. It's not every year. Sometimes we hold out until the 15th or 20th of May, then we drop. But it's a straight linear drop. We were going 90 bushel beans. By the 20th of May, we're on 75 bushel beans. That's 15 bushel, guys. That's huge. That's not every year, but I'm just saying you've got some pretty strong drops. And a couple of, I just do a couple of these varieties. And then I bring in the short season ones just to say, okay, we do have a crossover as we get into June, all right, and then we can kind of switch that up. I want to push a little bit so then we can hit a few others and get some of the intense management stuff. The branching, I think people don't have that appreciation, so I will hit this. Branch pods, all right? So this is planting date effect 2018 on a per plant basis overall. As it's decreasing, this one variety I selected. In the white, it's going to be the branch pods. they're decreasing as well, okay, and proportionally as well as absolute. So we are not going to have the branch pod load. What's interesting is this tail end here, this 9th of July planting, all right? Those never canopied, so we had light penetration, and so that light penetration said, oh, I need to branch, and so they branched, okay? But the vast majority of the time, these first 4 is all we're talking about. That loss in pod production is related to node as well as the branching pods, okay? Seed size, mixed bag, we're going to pass that up. Yeah, here's the absolute heat unit, or the number of days, R3 to R7. That 1 day alone, if you just want to put 3 to 4.5 bushels, bam, right there. 55 to 52, those 3 days, 9, 10 bushels easy. Okay. All right, so I'll end on this one, this study here. So, looking at some intense management, see if there's interactions or not. Look at them individually as well as in combination. And so this is over a couple of years. Untreated control, black. Individual products or treatments are in blue, so inoculant treated, 40 pounds of P2O5, 20 pounds of sulfur, that should ring a bell, right? In-furrow, I've got a system that we can do an in-furrow. Orthophosphate's what we did on this one, 8 pounds of P2O5. Various foliars, PGRs, fungicide, insecticide, some of those common ones, even some spoon feeding of nitrogen. The full kitchen sink in gold, all right? And then we brought in the omission. So basically the idea is we drop one of those major components out, and then if we look at yield or seed size, and if we see that drop in comparison to the full, that kind of quote gold or the kitchen sink, then that was the one that made the difference in that combination. And so we're dropping out inoculant, TSP, AMS, all the way down the line. Make sense? I know I'm in a rush phase, but okay. So yield. Same color coding, untreated control. Blues are going to be those single applications. Full is going to be the kitchen sink. And then red's going to be the omissions. We dropped out various components. Yield across 2 locations in 18 compared to the untreated control. Okay, we have yield improvements with ammonium sulfate treatment, even our in-furrow, the full, and then anything else. So, okay, that's, doesn't take a rocket scientist to say, okay, you start to manage it, you can increase yield. But I go back to this AMS, even across 2 locations, we're a 4 bushel response. This is our flat black, 4% organic matter soil, as well as a 3% organic matter soil. Starting to see those responses come into play. In red, again, the concept was if anything in the red asterisk above a red bar would be, oh, all right, we've dropped the yield. That was the component that added the yield. Didn't play out, all right, on the yield side of it. So kind of one of the take-homes on this one was probably more the AMS individually was playing for us. Seed size, let's switch it to that. Seed size, same concept. Okay, seed size was increased with the full application as well as those that had some other treatments that played out. The ones that dropped in comparison to the full, the one that dropped was the one that had the fungicide taken away. Okay, probably again leaf retention, seed size, right? Protein, all right? So here's one that's been pretty interesting playing out for us as well. Untreated control, the AMS, increased protein, nearly a percentage point. That's huge, okay? So if you recall, we had about 4 to 5 bushel increase in yield with AMS, as well as a protein increase, okay? Most people should have an appreciation if yield increases with soybeans, protein decreases. We're actually having an improvement in both. Okay, so just catch that. And then you notice the one that drops from the full, the one that had AMS dropped out of the system, okay, if you're looking at protein production. All right, here's cost, here's benefit. Red's bad, black's good. That's all you need to know, okay? So I don't intend for you to look at the absolute numbers on these 8, 9, 10 bushel yield levels, but black ones are black in the black, AMS, fungicide, but full or any of the other ones, straight red line on us, right? I mean, that's, again, it's about profitability. It's fun to talk about yield, but we need to get the profitability. So AMS was a nice one for us. Fungicide was playing out. 2019, it was a late planted year, 4th of June, 5th of June, and the 12th of June, so those average across. Only one freaking treatment came out, right? Better than untreated control. full, right? It ain't going to be a profit maker, though, I'll tell you that. And then even some of the ones that are individually dropping. A lot of red, right? Late planted crop, in-season management can't make it up. It cannot make it up. Take-homes, variety selection 6 to 12 bushel easily and even more so. Look at those that have interactions with management. Seed rates, trying to get that profit margin, 100,000 plants, give or take. Timely planted, let's get the nodes produced so we have a canopy and have the pods that are producing those. Look at the seed fill duration. Profits, again, it's about foundations, and then we can start to fine tune like we are doing with AMS. One that I didn't hit that I'll leave you with is we are starting to see some, I'll go and use the word synergy with a sulfur up front, AMS type treatment with our R3, R4 applications. So in other words, we're starting to see some yield improvement with the base of that, plus our R3, R4 fungicide application compared to each one of those individually. So we're starting to pull that together. So thank you guys. I'll be around for any questions.